Hello there. Why the stonewall? Why won't this government look into UK excess deaths, and why isn't the opposition pushing for a proper investigation? You only have to trawl through social media and some of the more open press around the world to see that there is a widespread problem of excess deaths, an excess of coincidences. So it's not just a UK thing, and yes, we do have a problem with this in the UK, but it may not be in the areas we were expecting. Dr. John Campbell has broken down some of the latest data from the Office for National Statistics and the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities. And the takeaway is that excess deaths are up in the areas of cardiac, cerebrovascular, liver problems and diabetes, but respiratory deaths are below the norm, and cancer deaths are just about at average rates, despite the fears of a cancer time bomb developing. But we're not seeing that at the moment. And then there's the issue of concerns coming from the British Heart Foundation over the astonishing, as they put it, increase in people with irregular heartbeats over the last few years, something I talked about yesterday. Now, one issue I have with the ONS statistics is the use of a rolling 5-year average when analysing current data, because that rolling 5-year average covers the period of the health emergency itself. Now, the ONS has removed 2020 from the picture as it would vastly skew the data, and is using the years 2017, 18 and 19 together with 2021 and 2022 for comparisons with this year 2023. But 2022 had excess deaths, and that is now part of the 5-year average and must have pushed the baseline up. And when we get to 2024, then with any excess from 2023, the baseline would be even higher. And if the excess is perpetuated, the real extent of the problem could be masked by an ever-increasing baseline. So it's good to see that the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities appears to have addressed this when collating their data, because that department says it uses a combination of deaths and population denominator data supplied by the ONS from 2015 to 2019. That provides more of a before and after picture and may therefore be more useful. But despite all the data collection, analysis and report writing, no one knows why this is happening. And it seems that no one is in much of a hurry to find out why hundreds or thousands of excess deaths happen week after week. Why not? So join the new paperclip rebellion to demand this critical issue be properly investigated. And this stonewall against getting to the bottom of the health emergency is widespread. A few Australian politicians, for example, are also being blocked somewhat like our Andrew Bridgen is. More on that later. Now this is interesting. One respected American insurance analyst, Josh Sterling, used UK government mortality data to explain to US senators the different outcomes to be expected between those that agreed to roll their sleeves up and those that refused the intervention. Because he told those senators that if the same is happening in the US with those that rolled their sleeves up, it would mean the excess demise of 600,000 US citizens every year. That video is doing the rounds on Twitter. And be in no doubt, the global insurance community will be looking into all this very, very deeply, because their continued existence hangs on their getting the data and their life insurance projections and premiums right, or else it's wipeout time. So based on what he said, I'm happy that I stayed at home that day. Now, cryptocurrencies might be about to take a hammering in the UK. There are many people out there who believe that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are the future for our freedoms from an overbearing and overtaxing government. And with its ups and downs, its popularity waxes and wanes. But it never goes away, and there was even talk of normalising it by regulating it and bringing it into the financial services fold. But something has changed. Maybe someone now sees it as a threat to the establishment control grid or the new normal that is being foisted upon us. Because the UK Parliament Treasury Select Committee of MPs has called for any plans for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin to be regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority to be dropped. But they went further and said that dealing in cryptocurrencies should be treated the same as gambling, because they say that bringing it under the regulatory umbrella would create a halo effect, making people think crypto is safer than it actually is. But surely that's exactly why the regulators and stock markets exist, to make it look like it's safe to gamble on shares and bonds, to make shorting and all those derivatives look like safe bets. Tell that to the people who lose so much to that every year. Maybe we should start treating bankers and traders as problem gamblers, because isn't that what they're actually engaged in for over 8 hours every single day? The UK is set for a Brexit cheese and meat blockade, we're told. Yes, from the end of October onwards, the UK will be introducing border controls on cheese and meat coming over from the European Union. Cue Ramona meltdown. But the reality is that on day one of Brexit at the end of January 2020, the EU immediately imposed all the customs barriers on our goods going into the EU that it could. But we did not reciprocate. We wanted to give importers time to adjust. The EU just wanted to hurt the UK exporters. But now the UK rules are going into place, just like the EU wanted. Now, the chief exec of the Cold Chain Federation, Shane Brennan, said these rules coming into force on November the 1st will see EU suppliers face a massive shock and be unable to fulfil their Christmas orders into the UK. So we've given them over 3 years to prepare for these rules, and it's going to come as a shock to them. And yet there do seem to be import advisors out there ready to help, and I'm sure there's UK government advice readily available. And I bet we don't turn away lorries because they filled the forms in with the wrong coloured pen or are bringing their packed lunch with them, like our vengeful EU friends and partners did to us in 2020. So I'm not sure it's going to be quite the juddering halt some would like us to believe. And now, as promised, we go over to Australia. Senator Malcolm Roberts of Queensland took his government to task, calling for a royal commission into the Australian government response to the health emergency. And he said that the rush of recent real science makes it clear that it had been a tragic and criminal exercise in stakeholder government, going on to say that the stakeholders had milked it for their own personal and corporate benefit at the expense of everyday Australians. And he said that was destroying confidence in the Australian healthcare system, while the aim for the corporates was to sell and make vast profits from their pharmakeia paraphernalia. But I gather, like a couple of our own MPs, Senator Roberts is one of a very few pushing for the truth. And it seems that the main and opposition parties in Australia will close ranks to prevent it. Sounds somewhat familiar? That video can be found on the Australian Parliament Fan YouTube channel.